welcome everyone. Um, we will be starting in just a few minutes. This is a new live format from Attitude and Dr. Sharon Saline. Um, and so we will be taking live questions during the event. I will be helping to moderate and ask those questions. And Sharon will be contributing her expertise.
We can't hear you, Annie. We just lost your volume. Oops, and she froze. So here I am on my own. Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about nurturing habits in kids with ADHD that stick. We are excited to have your participation and your questions on this in this session. I know that a lot of parents struggle with creating habits in their kids and routines who have, particularly kids who have ADHD. It can be frustrating, more frustrating than you would like. And last time, in the last two times, we've talked a little bit about morning routines and evening routines. And I thought we can certainly take questions about those today. But I also thought, we could talk a little bit about how to create, a homework routine that works for your family. Um, it seems like the theme of this month of YouTube Lives is about routines, and we've talked about time management as well. And I think that's because as we, transition back to the school year, even those of us who are adults who don't have children in school. I'm one of them. I'm very aware that so much of our lives here are still structured by and affected by the school year calendar. Um, I thought this would be a good time to really talk about how do we create a homework routine that really works. And particularly because homework is kind of the dreaded task. And we know that for people with ADHD, it's very difficult to do dreaded tasks. Why? Because people who have ADHD or live with neurodivergence, any of ADHD's good friends like learning disabilities or giftedness or level 1 autism or anxiety or depression, these are all things that can contribute to living with complex ADHD, that it's much harder to work up the, sort of oomph and energy for uninteresting tasks or tasks that are not inherently rewarding. And so we've talked about how, there's a difference between extrinsic motivation. I need to turn in my form so I can go on this field trip, or I need to renew my license so I can drive, versus intrinsic motivation, which is I'm doing something because I'm excited about the goal for me. I'm going to reach that next level on my computer game. I'm going to try to run 3 miles instead of two because I've never done that. And so, what we're trying to do today is to talk a little bit about how do we set up routines around homework, which is a super big dreaded task for most kids with ADHD. Not because they may not be interested in a project, but because they've really gone to school for the day and they've used up so many of their spoons. I'm using a new word I just learned, spoons. They've used up so many of their spoons, their energy to focus and manage themselves in the classroom, on the playground, in the hallway, at the cafeteria. And when they come home, they're just tired and they need to let down. Um, so um, I'm going to be talking, BB. I see that you are in the UK, and I will have advice for your situation. And the more specific question that you can ask, the better. Um, Thank you for participating. BB's asking, "What is my advice for a parent with ADHD, with children with ADHD?" And I'm gonna talk about that today in the framework of dealing with homework. So your kids come home and they're tired because they've used up a lot of their energy to manage themselves. That's self-regulation, and they don't really want to, or they don't have more energy to apply to doing something that it seems unpleasant, like homework, or might seem like Mount Everest, insurmountable. um, so how are we going to set it up so that actually we do the tough task first and then we earn the reward? That's where we put the have do's before the want to's. And this is true for adults living with ADHD. We need to put the have to. I have to take out the garbage, even though it's one of my least favorite tasks, because they come and pick it up tomorrow. And if I miss the day, then I'm going to have overflowing, smelly garbage for a week. I don't want to do that. And that's a motivator for me. So I'm going to do that, and then afterwards I'm going to reward myself by doing some sudoku or maybe watching a show. So with homework, the other factor is that if your child takes medication for ADHD, it can wear off after a certain time of day. So they come home, and we have a limited window where there's still enough medication in their brains to help them attend to their homework, and we're also dealing with a kind of emotional fatigue around schoolwork altogether. For some kids who do sports after school, by the time they get home, they're physically tired, they're emotionally tired, they're hungry, and of course, then they have homework in front of them. So let's unpack this a little bit, because this can be true for us as adults. Today I have a presentation I need to work on, and I'm doing an excellent job of productive procrastination. I bought myself plane tickets for a conference where I am speaking. I've answered some key emails. Have I worked on the presentation? No. And what's happening is that I'm starting to feel a little more anxious. And I'm like, okay, when am I going to do that? After dinner is when I'm going to have to do that. Not super psyched about it, but I have a limit on it till 9. And then at 9, I give myself, a little bit of time to watch TV and, chat with my husband, or work on the sweater I'm knitting for my granddaughter who turned 1 today. So, how does this work with kids? So, if your child comes home from school and needs a little bit of downtime, the emphasis on that is a little bit. Okay. So they come home, they can have snack, they get a small amount of time to decompress, right? Maybe 15 minutes, because we are rushing against the clock if they are taking ADHD medication, because it's going to continue to leave their body with, by 4:30, maybe 5, and then you can enter that witching hour. So we want to get you know, the the unpleasurable tasks done before the medication leaves, and leave rewards like gaming, or watching YouTube videos, or bouncing in on the trampoline in the backyard for after. Okay. So they come home, have a little snack, and then sit down and do the work. And ideally, what we want to create is family work time. Many kids with ADHD struggle to sit down and do this on their own. And instead of being mad at them or frustrated with them, let's flip that on its head and really show up with them. So we sit at the table doing some things that we need to do. And I'm sure you all have stuff that you need to do. And then they sit at the table with their work. We're available to answer questions if they have it. We're available to kind of redirect them if they're going off track. But we're there, and we're showing them that we're there with our presence and with our a support, our body language, and our tone of voice. One thing that can be helpful when we're thinking about tasks is to understand what is the order that someone likes to do their tasks. Some people like to do the hard thing first. Some of my clients call this eating the frog. Want to eat the frog and then do something easy and then maybe something medium. Some people like to start off with something easy, warm up, get in a flow, and then do the hard thing. Let's start by asking our kids and ourselves, how do we like to approach tasks? So if you can, and you can participate in the chat, let me know. Do you like to do the hard thing first and then what comes after? Do you like to do the easy thing first and then what comes after? Because then what we want to do is talk with our kids about what's easy, what's medium, and what's hard. And so we can set up a successful family work time with them. We also want to understand how long they can concentrate before they need a break. For younger children in elementary school, this could be 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. And then they need a body break, a glass of water, um, just being able to stand up and sit down, whatever it is. And we have to plan on that and participate in it so we can redirect them back to the work that needs to be done. For us as adults, I like to kind of say, even though we might get into hyper focus, we don't really want to hyper focus more than an hour and a half. Why? Because when we're hyper focusing, we're using up energy in our brains. The glucose, which is sugar, which is what fuels our system, is depleted, and it gets more and more depleted. And so, what happens is after an hour and a half, if you haven't had anything to drink, you haven't gone to the bathroom, you've been staring at your computer, your brain actually needs a break. And a 15-minute break is a great thing to do after an hour and a half. Maybe you only need 10 minutes, but take a break, go outside, take a walk, get a drink of water, make a cup of coffee. What I would advise you not to do too much of is looking at your phone. Of course, if you want to look at your messages to see if there's been an important, a call, or you want to do Wordle or something because that actually is relaxing, that's fine. But we have to be very careful of shredding our attention and bopping from thing to thing during the time when we're giving ourselves a brain break, because then we're actually not getting a break, we're draining more energy from our brains. So we have figured out if we like to do hard, medium, easy, if we like to do easy, medium, and hard. And we've considered how long is the time that somebody can actually focus before they need a break. I worked with a girl in sixth grade, and she was able to concentrate on something with her father present for 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break, another 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break, then 10 minutes, and then she was done. That was it. Brain was complete with academics for the day. So instead of assuming what your child can or cannot do, have a conversation with them. Talk to their teacher, particularly if they're in elementary school, or in middle school if you can access a teacher. It's harder in middle school or in high school, to reach a teacher to sit down and have this kind of conversation. But you can request a team meeting to talk to your child's teachers and say, what are you observing in the classroom? How can I support that at home? What would be helpful? Here's something I learned about what could work for my child. So all of these things help with, sort of reduce the homework hassle. Then, when they've completed the chunk that you've agreed on that consists of family work time, they've earned a privilege. What is that privilege? I believe that screens are a privilege. They're not an entitlement. You're not born entitled to play on your phone for 3 hours a day or even have a phone. So, what are some different options for them that they could earn? And we want to make a list of those so they can choose them. And maybe we want to, sort of change those around so it's not it doesn't get boring for them. Maybe this week you get this, next week you get that. And we can do that for ourselves as well as adults because we get bored too. So I'm wondering if you're watching this, if you could share what some of the challenges are in your home with homework in particular and setting up after school routines. One of the things that I hear from parents of kids who play sports is that kids come home or they go straight to sports, and they do their athletics, or maybe it's an instrument, or they participate in the school musical, or a craft or something like that. And then they come home and have dinner. And after dinner, they're just very tired. There's not a lot of juice left to do this kind of homework. One of my clients chose something very interesting. So her high school son said to her, "I don't want to do homework after school. I'm too tired and my brain is spent. I want to, play soccer, come home, eat dinner, veg out, and then what I want to do is wake up at 6 a.m., take my um, Vyvanse and do my homework before I have to be at school by 8 o'clock." And his mother was, understandably skeptical. She's like, "Well, I don't know. You don't wake up so well when I have to wake you for 7." He said, "I know, but I really want to try." So we talked about the value of an experiment. And I think this is a really important concept for families living with ADHD. What is the experiment that you're willing to try? I passed a sign in my town that said, "Making mistakes is proof that you are trying." And I thought, isn't that fabulous? I love that. Making mistakes is proof that you are trying. And that's really what we're aiming for, trying. Efforting, because for people with ADHD and complex ADHD, it's not just a toss off. It's really a whole body effort that involves your thinking, cognition, that involves emotion, your feelings, and involves action, behavior. And these things are integrated when we effort. And efforting is really geared toward things that are challenging for us. We don't have to effort so much with things that we love. We're naturally drawn to doing them. But we have to effort more with things that might be tough for us or might not interest us that much. So when kids are proposing something like my client was proposing, I really encouraged his mom, even though it was a hardship because she didn't want to wake up at 6 o'clock, to wake up at 6, to give her son his medicine, have him come downstairs because if he stayed in his room, he'd go back to bed. Come downstairs, sit at the table with his bowl of cereal, and do his homework. Let's see what happens. And they came back the next week and they said, well, out of 5 days, it basically occurred 4 times. I was like, "Do you know that's like 90%? That's amazing. That's incredible. That's like a success in every way." And they were so happy and proud of themselves that they were able to try something and see how it worked. The happiest person was the teenage boy. And so this was the routine that they established. And what happened usually is that he would sit down at the table and do the homework, and mom would do stuff for her day. And this meant mom had to go to bed earlier, of course. But she found that, while he was at the table doing homework, she was able to, do a yoga routine or prep for dinner in the crock pot, or things that you hadn't been able to do before. So when we think outside of the box, we really allow ourselves to nurture different types of habits. And a habit is something that is really a routine, that we kind of try something and then we do it over and over, and then it becomes second nature. And last week we met, Annie talked about stacking habits. So she gets her coffee, and then she was going to stack taking, I think, she had some morning medicine, and she was going to stack that on top of taking her coffee, so that was part of the routine. It takes time to remember things like this. And if you have ADHD and you struggle with working memory, it's going to take you a little bit longer. If you have slower processing speed, it's going to take you a little bit longer. And so we want to remember compassion for ourselves and for our kids when we are thinking about creating new habits, particularly around work. And so, with this work time, sort of family work time model, you are present so that you can kind of get up and go to the bathroom and walk by your daughter's computer and notice that she's on YouTube and not actually doing her social studies assignment. So you can say, hey, you know what? I can see that you're on YouTube. Back to social studies, please. Just a clear kind of redirection without a judgment or anger or anything like that. Um, it's not easy. I have to say that I remember that when my second child was in high school, and they were not managing screens in the way that we wanted. We moved homework downstairs to the dining room table, and they were none too happy about it. But they wanted the privileges that went along with finishing homework, larger screen time, or being able to have a baseline of a GPA that allowed them to go out on the weekends until a certain time and things like that. Charlie is asking a question. Thank you so much, Charlie. I'm so grateful. Charlie says, to start routines or be consistent, I need a lot of iPhone alarms. I just need to double check that AM versus PM is correct. Yes, alarms are fantastic. I have to tell you that I use the notifications on my phone all the time. Every time I set up a meeting or an appointment, like with a doctor or the dentist, I put a notification, and I put two. I put one for 15 minutes before, or however long I think it's going to take to drive, and then an hour before that, so that I am really alerted early enough so that I can and start to think, oh, okay, I have this thing coming up. So it is important to do that, and I think it's really what's most significant here is that what helps you. And yes, you have to check if it's AM or PM. I have to admit that I've set an alarm for myself for 7 p.m. on my clock next to my bed. And then I slept till like 7:45. I'm like, why didn't my alarm go off? Oh, that's 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., not AM. So I think you're right about that. I'm curious if anyone else has some tricks or tips about how they are managing to build habits for themselves or for their kids, because it's great when we can share as a community. Tips and tools, hacks that we're using. That's part of why we do these lives, not only so you can ask your questions and I can attempt to answer them, but so that we can find support in our community. So I'm curious if anyone else has any comments or questions about this. Annie, I don't know if you can talk and we can hear you, but I'd love to know if we can. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, so yes, I am here. So sorry about the frozen video, but um but
It
I am
happens.
here. I am here. And I know a question that we get quite often from attitude readers is how to make a new routine feel tangible,
Mm.
um, especially for kids, but adults as well.
Well, I think that when you're trying to make a new routine tangible, we want to start small. So I don't know about you, Annie, but I can only change one thing at a time. So my husband will say, when you come home, can you make sure you turn off the light outside? Um, don't put your backpack on the counter. And also, I would like it if you could stop interrupting me so much. And I basically, this was, we were having like one of those conversations. And I said, I can do one of those things. That's what I can work on. One. Which one do you want? And of course, he picked interrupting, which is the hardest, right? It would be much easier if I didn't have to if I didn't put my briefcase on the counter, that's easier. But we want to think about what is one thing that really matters to us, but we also want to ask our children, what's one thing in a routine that would make a difference to them? What matters to them? Because the chances are, and I talk about this in my book and in my card decks and in my work, the chances are the more that your child has skin in the game, sees something that's important to them, then they're going to really pay attention to effort on that, and to want to incorporate that because they're getting something they want from the whole thing. And let's think about this for a minute, because usually these are double-sided, right? So what your child would like is for you to stop nagging them in the morning. And what you would like is for your child to be ready for school at the same time, at the time they need to, without your yelling at them. So that's actually two sides of the same coin. And so then you can work together on which nagging thing that you do is most irritating to them. And then that's the behavior that you're going to focus on to routinize. That's the one thing we're going to try to get going over and over. And then when that's kind of second nature, we can bring in something else.
That's a great reminder, especially in back to school season where you want to tackle everything all at once and solve all the problems. It's a good reminder to focus on one thing at a time.
It just overwhelms people, and this is people who are neurotypical or neurodiverse. People really say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this is why I hate New Year's resolutions, because inevitably people can't do them all or any, and then they feel bad that they're not able to do their New Year's resolutions because they had like 3 or 4 of them. And really, I think what New Year's should be about is, this is completely off topic here, but is about celebrating something you changed or you accomplished in the course of the year that mattered to you, and then picking how you're going to continue to grow that or something related to that, so that you're, stacking, you're building on a success. I noticed that Wolf says, how do you keep from procrastinating or snoozing the reminders and alarms? Any tips? Wolf, that's a great question. So I would suggest that if you are a snoozer, that you set 2 alarms for yourself. One is next to your bed that you can hit snooze on, and the other is across the room 10 minutes later that you cannot hit snooze on. And that will keep beeping until you're up, out, and across the room. And once you're up and out of your bed, that's what I meant by out of your bed and across the room, the likelihood of you going back to bed is smaller. I'm not saying it's non existent, but it is smaller than if you just keep all your alarm next to your bed. And I really encourage you to use actual clock alarms. I know they're outdated, or you can put your phone across the room and your phone will go off. But if you keep everything next to you, the chances of you being able to successfully change this behavior are diminished. Charlie
Mhm.
says a weekly calendar on the fridge for kids' activities has been helpful for them to know what to expect for the week. Charlie, did you listen to us in the last 2 sessions? Because we talked about that specifically. Good for you. The predictability helps them to anticipate and have time to prepare. Right. 100%. I support this because they can see what's coming. They can see what they need to do, what the steps are, instead of you being a reminding machine. Annie?
Mhm. Sharon, what do you think about the idea of a kind of a weekly family check-in slash planning session where you can talk about the week ahead?
I love this. I love this so much. Um, these family meetings do not have to be long. I think I'm a clinical psychologist, and so we would have family meetings, and of course my kids would like, and my husband is a coach and a chaplain, and so we would have family meetings, and my children would like roll their eyes in the back of their head, like, oh my God, how are we going to process and talk about this, and ugh, yuck. So of course, we didn't. We kept it, if we had a family meeting about an issue, we kept it to a certain time limit, and that was it. And that's what I would suggest with these family meetings for planning and organizing. Keep them to 15 minutes, maybe 20, because the longer that they are, the more your kids will start to dread them and push back. And we don't want your kids to dread and push back something that's actually aimed to help them. What we want to do is to have them say, okay, well, don't I have a soccer game this week, or I have dress rehearsal for my play every on Wednesday and Tuesday, so that they're really thinking about it. um I think that's really great. And I would pick a time like on Sunday, frankly, um, because the week is ahead. If we pick Saturday, no, they're just recovering from the week. If we pick Monday, it's already started. So sometime on Sunday, maybe if you have after brunch, um, or after dinner, before the week really kind of gets started. Wolf
Mhm.
asks a question. Oh, you're welcome. What about reminders set up for the rest of the day that aren't appointments, and we're tempted not to stop? We're tempted to not stop what we're already doing. Right. So the thing is, it's very hard for people with ADHD to exert impulse control and self regulation. And that is to stop when you're making progress. You just kind of want to keep going until it's finished. And I totally understand this. And I do this sometimes to my detriment, because then when I'm finished, my brain is done. And I don't want my brain to be done by 11 a.m. in the morning or noon. I want to be able to, have fuel for the rest of the day. So I think that when reminders are set up to take a break, to eat lunch, that we want to honor them, and we want to honor them to that part inside of us that we know is going to be happy when we do it. I talk about the inner ogre on one shoulder and the inner champion. And the inner champion is going to be super happy when you actually set an alarm and do something for yourself that only you can do because you followed through. It doesn't have to be every time, but if you can do one of those things every day, you're going to start to build up some gold in your bank. And that bank is the bank of self-worth, and self-confidence, and self in a way self-trust, that you believe that you do things that you set yourself up for. We can talk more about that in a future session. But I think, Annie, we might be at the end.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I did want to mention, those of you listening, that Dr. Saline will be leading a full hour long webinar for Attitude on August 28th on a very related topic, planning, prioritizing, and time management solutions for students with ADHD. So if you are a caregiver, we highly recommend this webinar. You can register for free on attitudemag.com, and online there you will also find a large library of contributions from Dr. Saline. I did not get a chance to mention at the outset that She is the author of What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, Working Together to Empower Kids for Success in School and Life, as well as the ADHD Solution Deck. And she is a longtime and valued contributor to Attitude. So thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your participation. And we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.